Hey, Cookies here with the part 1 of our healing Nyalotha in normal and heroic difficulty overview. I'll just be going over some early gameplay of my first pulls on these bosses in this raid and talking to you guys about the major mechanics that you're going to be wanting to watch out for as a healer, and just kind of giving any kind of, I guess, general tips and tricks going into the fight for the first time and whatnot. So this first boss, I am playing Balance, but for the rest, I am playing Resto. But either way, same rules apply. We can still go over the fight, even if I'm DPSing. So, jumping right off into it, the major mechanic you're going to be wanting to watch out for and be keeping the raid topped off and healed with, or healed for, is Incineration. And that's this cast that goes out right here pretty early on in the fight, and it's going to happen pretty periodically afterwards. And it's basically 3 players get a debuff, they have to run outside of the group, and then the whole raid takes damage based on how far away they got from the group. So this is where you're going to be really wanting to, as like a Resto Druid for instance, you'd really want to make sure their group's like got a bunch of rejuvenations out and you're ready to press Wild Growth as soon as these detonations happen. And then, you know, as a Disc Priest, you want to make sure you have shields out and you got your atonements ready and stuff like that. And then the next major mechanic is going to be coming up here that you're going to be wanting to watch out for, which is Gale Blast. And there are certain times within the fight that Gale Blasts will almost overlap on top of Incineration, and that can be very, very deadly. But that's the 2 major points of healing. And then the only other thing that's going to do like a significant amount of damage to your group is this right here, when the raid goes and stacks up over here in the corner while all these patches of fire are on the ground. You're going to see the raid starts taking like a pretty heavy amount of ticking damage during this. And so you're just going to want to make sure you keep the group topped off, because as you get further and further in the fight, that's going to start weighing a bit heavier and heavier on your mana and your resources and all that kind of stuff. So that's a good time for things like Barrier and all that kind of stuff. And here's the Incineration cast again, and it just rinse and repeats like that. And during the intermission phase, where you're breaking the pillars like this that happen and like killing the ads that spawn and whatnot, healing is not a major concern here at all. This is actually probably the best time to drink, if anything. And then the fight just plays on repeat, and then you're done. So that is about it. So we'll move on to our next boss, which is Maut. And with Maut, sorry, I'm just trying to open this up here really quick. For Maut, actually the healing requirement's fairly easy in this fight. The major things we're going to be watching out for is during the intermission phase, where we're collecting and blowing up orbs. That's going to be where like a lot of healing output needs to be distributed, and that's where you're going to be using like major healing cooldowns and stuff like that. And then other than that, you're really just passively kind of healing this just passive ticking damage that's happening to the raid that gets more and more intense throughout the fight. And the major thing to point out with this fight, I guess, is do not be conservative with your mana at all. Just spend your mana. You will have plenty of it, because when you get into the intermission phase, your mana is going to restore quite rapidly. So you're going to have a lot of extra mana compared to what you're normally used to. So, and a big priority in this fight as well is doing damage. So as a healer, you should be 100% helping out with DPSing. You'll see little bursts of damage happen here and there, but like I said, the main source of damage is going to happen during the intermission, which we'll go ahead and just skip around to really quick. So this will be our intermission here, and you'll start seeing the group take a significant chunk of damage as we're sitting in this intermission. Basically, every time those big orbs that are coming towards the group, you can see one like back there behind the boss right now, when that gets soaked by a player, like when a player runs into it, everyone's going to take like a pretty big burst of damage. And then you can see my mana restoring like pretty rapidly because of the orbs that are on top of us. And these little purple swirls that are spawning during this phase, you can just stand still, because that's a player with a debuff that needs to get out of the group. So, but basically just keep the group topped off as these orbs are coming in and you're soaking them. And then, again, the fight just plays on repeat, and the rest of the healing is really easy. It's mainly just that phase 2. So we'll just skip over that boss now and go over to Prophet Skitra. And the major mechanics for this boss is going to be Shred Psyche, and then also during phase 2 is where like a lot of healing requirement is happening. So Shred Psyche, comparative to the PTR, it was quite a bit different. So you're gonna see here in a moment. I want to skip ahead because I don't know where it happens. I think it happens right here. Yeah. So these players, there's going to be a player or two that get Shred Psyche on them, and you can see him running away. He's going to drop an ad. I think I turned to see it. Yeah, you can see the ad right there. It's casting. So he's going to drop that ad on the floor, and it's going to cast this Psychic Outburst, and the raid needs to kill it, but it's going to always get like one cast off at least. And the cast does a huge portion of everyone's HP, so you need to make sure everyone is completely topped off when that's happening. And then this is the other phase that's going to be dealing some damage to the group, because all of these like images are going to be spam casting on just individual players, just doing a decent amount of damage. So this is just where you're going to have like a lot of sustained healing to do. And then outside of this, it's just preparing for the Shred Psyche ad cast. And other than that, you should just, again, be helping with doing damage and stuff like that. And that's pretty much it. The only other major mechanic of the fight is the wall that happens, the Wall of Illusions, but it never happened for us, so I don't know if we like pushed it too fast or if it was just bugged, but we never got that mechanic, so we just kept bouncing back and forth between one Shred Psyche ad and then dealing with the illusions, and that was it. So not too much to go over during this fight. So we'll move on to the next one, which will be the Hive Mind. And the Hive Mind was actually incredibly easy, so again, not too much to go over. With the Hive Mind, you're really going to be wanting to watch for when this little plague of like insects spawn and is like swarming around the raid on the outsides. That's when everyone's going to be taking like this pretty heavy amount of raid damage. I am pretty sure it's called, let me see if I have the ability written down here. I think it's called Devouring Frenzy, so that's when you're going to want to be doing like big major cooldowns and stuff like that on harder difficulties. And later on in the fight, it does do like a pretty significant amount of damage. And then other than that, it looks like, I believe it's called Echoing Void is the other like main mechanic you'll want to watch out for and use, you know, minor cooldowns for, major cooldowns for. Other than that, it's really about ad control and then essentially dodging. This is Echoing Void here, so like everyone needs to spread out, and then everyone will take like a nice little burst of damage. And if there were any players stacked, they take extra damage. So those are the two mechanics: Devouring Frenzy, which is when the swarm of bugs is around you, and then Echoing Void, which is where everyone needs to spread out. And other than that, you're just going to deal with some chaos in the room. So see, this is another Devouring Frenzy, and you can see it's overlapping with Echoing Void, and you'll see we take a pretty decent amount of damage. So we'll call that good for Hive Mind, because that's pretty much the entire fight. And then the next boss we have is Raw Den, which is a super fun fight. I love this fight already, and I've only done it one time. So, for Raw Den, the major things to look out for is these varying essences that you're going to be soaking, or these orbs, so to speak. So we start out with the Vita orb, and what this is going to do is you're going to see, I'm actually assigned to do this. So basically we have to bounce players between these two markers to like keep catching this debuff, because it goes to the furthest player away every time. So we like alternate who goes there. So like I'm going to go to blue, and then it's going to pass from orange to me, and then he's going to move off of orange, and then you'll see someone else go stand on orange, and then I'm passing from blue to orange. And it doesn't matter where I'm facing, it'll just always go to the furthest player. And then see, I get off blue, someone else goes to blue, and then it's going to jump off of orange to blue, so on and so forth. But that does a very minor amount of damage. You basically just need to keep those players topped off. And then let's see where the major damage started happening, because this fight was actually really lackluster. I know when the boss does the Void Empowered, so when the Void Orb hits the boss, he's going to do a nice little burst of, not necessarily damage, but it's going to put like a healing absorb on everyone in the raid. You can see it happens right here. So you just want to make sure you get that topped off quickly. And then, let's see. I believe the next major part that we were keeping an eye on is, oh, these soaks. That's the other thing, is these void circles. So there's there's two different void circles. There's this one with like the deep black color in the middle, and then there's a more like meteor styled one like this, where it's just a hollow circle and it's just like the outline of the void. That one you want to stack in the raid with, and the raid will take like a nice burst of damage. You'll see it go off here in a second. We take a nice burst of damage, so that's where you'll probably want to save like major cooldowns for. And then this we need to get out of, because that's just supposed to be one person soaking, and then this circle right here is the one we want to be standing in, and you can see there, we definitely took a lot of damage. And then I think here it doesn't get soaked, and we take even more damage, but luckily heroic isn't super punishing. And then I know during the end of the fight is where another like pretty big portion of damage happens. But yeah, that's definitely like the major mechanic, is this soak mechanic. So when everyone's soaking, you're going to make sure everyone's topped off and that you're doing a lot of healing. Let's see, I think this is the final phase right here. Yeah, that's not really a healer mechanic. We won't worry too much about that. Just stay out of the void eruptions. And then just a lot of people are going to be taking passive damage because the boss is just doing like a passive cleave to everyone. And also people are getting this debuff that they have to run away from each other with. And that'll be doing like a nice burst of ticking damage to the whole group. And yeah, just as the fight goes on, obviously it gets a little more intense, but definitely that void soaking mechanic is going to be like the major thing you're going to want to watch out for. And then just the last phase we're going to want to kind of like pump to get the boss down before he kills you. Next one is Dark Inquisitor Xanesh. This one took us quite a few pulls because the soccer mechanic was not fun. And the major mechanics we're going to watch out for in this one is going to be... where do I have it written down here? We got... I believe it's called Soulflay, is where it's going to drop some, like for instance, I get it here, but you'll have like a multiple members out of the raid get it at the same time, and that's why just everyone usually moves. But this big red circle, the farther I am away from it, the less damage I take. So, and I think it's like 6 or 7 people in the whole raid get chosen. And then you have these like dodgeable zones, and you got stuff on the floor, and then that's the void, that's the soul tear going off. So it's basically just as those souls spawn, you'll see them spawn again here soon. Let's see when it spawns. Takes forever. Soulflay 2, here we go. So void ritual, and then we're gonna get a soulflay on top of it, I believe. Yep. Oh wait, it hasn't spawned yet. Here goes the soulflay. You'll see a bunch of ads spawn on the floor. We need to run away from them, and then we'll take a nice chunk of damage here after like a delayed burst. And pop. Yep. Burst of damage. And then that's pretty much it. Other than that, you're just taking, like, again, passive ticking damage. Seems like that's a common theme in this raid, is taking passive ticking damage. And then obviously avoiding these zones or getting hit like me, because you're bad. And I think the fight just really plays on repeat after that, so there's not much from like a healer perspective, because this fight is heavily based around the soccer mechanic, so just watch out for the soul tears or the soul flays, and just make sure you move away from them. And then our last boss for now, for part 1, is going to be Vexiona. And this one was another really good fight. I like this fight a lot, but there was some huge lag issues. But essentially the way that I found that the damage patterns work in this fight is every time the boss essentially casts, it's going to be encroaching shadows. So you can see here it goes out right here, and we take like a little burst of damage. There's gonna be a few people that get circles around them, they need to run them out, drop the pool of shit on the ground, yada yada yada, come back to the raid. Anyways, that'll do a nice little burst of damage to the raid, and then also, so that's encroaching shadows. And then also when the boss puts down, where is it? Is it the, oh, it might not say. It's basically when these ads are spawning. You can see these ads here. when they spawn, like when the gate spawns right over here, you can see we take a burst of damage. So the best way to just tell when your raid's going to be taking damage in this fight is when Encroaching Shadows is being cast. It'll be like a 1 tick, and then a few second delay, and then another tick of damage. And it'll drop people to like about half health if you don't heal at all. So just be ready for that, and then outside of that window, there's almost nothing to do, so you should just be full DPSing the boss, because this boss does have like quite a bit of HP. And in the last phase, it's definitely like a pretty heavy DPS check as far as like that kind of stuff goes. So, and then the last phase is the other thing I wanted to show you guys. You can see here again, Encroaching Shadows. Just keeping the group topped off before the next set of Encroaching Shadows. And then, yeah, Dark Gateway is the other cast. That's the cast that spawns the ad, and that also does like a burst of AoE to the entire raid. And then the last phase is coming up right about here, and we were having huge latency issues, so it's probably going to look really bad. But during this phase, you're going to want to make sure the raid's like prepped up and ready to heal every time the boss is casting Heart of Darkness. And also be sure to dispel people if they get feared. But that usually shouldn't happen. We just had it happening because of the lag. But yeah, Heart of Darkness in phase 2, and then during phase 1, it's just every time Encroaching Shadows is being cast. And that's part 1. So that's the first 6 bosses of the instance, and we'll go over the next like 4 bosses probably in part 2, and then we'll be going over the Carapace of N'Zoth and N'Zoth himself in part 3 of the video, which I hope to get out tomorrow night. So thanks for watching. I hope this helps as just like a quick little rundown. It's not really meant to be like a guide of how to do the bosses. It's just more just like a quick, you know, here's what you need to know as a healer going into these fights and what to watch out for and what timings to look for, so that you're not trying to like learn as your guild's starting to progress through it or anything like that if you're taking your time through heroic or anything like that. So that way you can just get in there and like really help people out understand the fights a little bit faster and help yourself understand the fight a little bit quicker. So without having to do the whole like trial and error figuring out where you should be using certain abilities or cooldowns. So hope that helped, and I'm sorry the video is a little bit long, but see you guys in the next one.